Hello, parents at Becket Keys Church of England School. It's Mr. Scott Evans here, providing you with a short video to supplement the letter that I've sent you about our plans for wider reopening for Year 10 and 12 in line with government regulations. There are 6 principles that we've taken to the wider reopening, and we've worked closely with the Russell Education Trust. The 6 principles are that we will risk assess really carefully everything that we intend to do in school. We're going to make sure that we minimise contact from student to student and student to staff. We're going to work in discrete groupings. The government have said that only 25% of the eligible cohort should return at any one point, and we're intending to keep that 25% in a discrete group as much as we can. We're training staff and students and providing similar videos and training to this for them. We will use limited amounts of PPE in line with the government expectations on that. And we will create a new behaviour expectation homeschool agreement for students, the school and parents to sign up to. In summary, our operational overview looks like this. As I said, Year 10 and 12 will be returning and to be taught in small groups of no more than 25% back in school at any time. We'll continue with our high quality remote learning provision, and we will also continue with our daily support for children of key workers and vulnerable students. For Year 10, there's a 3-step plan. In the first week, we will have academic review meetings where students will be invited into school for a one-to-one socially distanced meeting with their tutor or another member of the senior team. In week 2, we'll start seeing Year 10 for core subjects, and they'll have lessons with groups of about 8 students in a class with a teacher. That will be repeated in week 4. In week 3, we'll offer them option subjects where they'll have, again, small group lessons of about 8 students in a class with a teacher doing their option subject. It will look something like this. So the week commencing the 15th of June, we will have 2 forms coming in on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. Students will come in one at a time for a specific appointment, and I'll be sending you details about how to book that appointment next week. Once we've seen all the students for a one-to-one academic review meeting like that to find out how they've been getting on with the remote learning and where their areas of development are, we will then see them from the 22nd of June for 4 lessons of maths, English and science. Those lessons will happen in the morning on either Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday, and then the Year 10s will continue to come in always on a Monday for their lessons. On the following week, 29th of June, they will have all 4 of their options, and then the following week they'll go back to having the core subjects. In that week they'll have 2 maths lessons, an English lesson and a science lesson. Lessons will be about 40 minutes long. They'll happen back to back. In the blue weeks, they'll be set by ability. We'll set them according to their maths ability. So they'll be in a small group with students of similar ability. They'll have an English lesson, a maths lesson and science lessons. In the final week, the week beginning with the 13th of July, they'll go back to having their option subjects again. Students won't be coming into school on Friday unless we've decided to offer them an additional session of targeted support, which would be either one-to-one or in a very small group indeed. Which group they're going to be in will be announced next week, and I'm afraid will not be able to change. So we will say you are coming in on a Tuesday, and that will be the only day that we will be able to offer them. They won't be able to change groups, and I'm afraid they won't necessarily be with their friends. Year 12, it's a similar plan where they'll start with one-to-one academic review meetings. For Year 12, those could be slightly longer. And they will go through again how they've been getting on at home, what progress they've been making and where the problems are. Following that, they will then have a series of afternoon sessions where they'll have 2-hour lessons, face-to-face lessons in small groups following their option subjects. With Year 12, some of those groups might be slightly larger. We might even host some in the main hall, where we may have a larger group of students having a masterclass session, lecture style, for 2 hours. The timings for Year 10 and 12 will be announced next week, and again, I'm afraid will not be able to change. To travel in for these sessions, we're encouraging the students to cycle and walk if possible, or if not, be driven into school by their parents. If that's not possible, then potentially consider a taxi, encouraging students to avoid using public transport as much as possible. However, if they do need to use public transport, then they should follow the government guidance and wear a face covering. The student travel and staff travel is the same. Staff should be encouraged to walk or cycle or drive or come by taxi, and should avoid public transport as much as possible. We're encouraging the students to go home straight after school and mustn't gather in social gatherings. So a bit more detail about arrival and departure. We're aiming to have staggered entry and departure times. Students should arrive promptly for their lesson, just 5 minutes before it starts. Staff will be coming in slightly earlier than that, but we're minimising the amount of time that anyone is on site for. They should only come onto the site if they're on the rota for that day. Again, as I said, they can't change their day. They can't come in on a different day because that's when their friend is coming. Upon arrival, students should wait on the playground 2 metres apart, and that will be marked out and supervised. And at the end of the session, students will be released in a staggered manner. Students should immediately disperse and go home. As I said, no social gatherings, even though the regulations are that they can gather in groups of 6 in the park. Our expectation is that they won't do that. If they're in our school uniform, our expectation is that they go straight home. If they want to go home, take their uniform off, throw that in the wash, and then go out and meet some friends at the park, that's fine, that's up to them. But as far as we're concerned, we don't want to see any social gatherings of our students to or from school. And parents, please, can you make sure that you're not approaching staff at the gates to talk to us unless it's an emergency or a safeguarding issue. We're going to make some adjustments to our behaviour and homeschool agreements. Those will include things like students leaving promptly, not congregating. It'll also include them using hand sanitizer on entering and leaving school. We're going to have a desk available for them as they come in. They're going to use hand sanitizer, and we'll tick them off to make sure that they're here. There's lots of additional hand sanitizer around school. It's going to be available outside the toilets so that they will hand sanitize as they go into the toilets, do their business in the toilet, then wash their hands, and then use hand sanitizer again afterwards. Also got hand sanitizer on the way in and out of every single building, and on the way in and out of every single classroom. We'll be ensuring that they avoid physical contact at all times, and they must agree to that in the homeschool agreement. We know a lot of them haven't seen each other for a while, and they may be tempted to hug and greet each other. That won't be allowed. They won't be able to share and swap equipment, and they must always sit in their allocated seat. They do that anyway at Becket Keys, but all the more importantly as we make sure that they are sitting 2 metres apart. They must maintain a safe distance when moving around the buildings, and we will have markings to encourage them to do that, and stairs that only go up or down to ensure that that happens. And they must abide by the catch it, bin it, kill it approach for any coughs and sneezes. Parents, all we need you to do is just support us in that homeschool agreement, not come onto site unless there's a safeguarding emergency and notify us if your child falls sick with any symptoms, and then engage with the government's test, track and trace system, which I'll speak more about at the end. In terms of uniform, for those students who are already coming in for key worker provision, because you're coming in on a daily basis, you can wear your school uniform or your Becket Keys PE kit. For those in year 10 and 12 coming in, we want you to come in your Becket Keys PE kit. The idea of wearing the PE kit is that it's really easy to wash and can be completely washed when you get home. And also, hopefully, the weather will continue to be warm, and so it's slightly more casual and relaxed to wear. There should be no school bags coming into school at all. Obviously, they are potentially going to be bringing germs into school and being dragged around. So we want to avoid bags and avoid excess equipment. If necessary, students could bring in a small wipeable bag, but only really if necessary. Students are going to be avoiding bringing books back and forth, and they'll be working on paper, which we will supply them in school. I would recommend that you bring a full water bottle though, because there won't be any water fountains in use at school at all. If we invite your son or daughter into school, we will be expecting them to attend. So if for any reason they cannot attend, please can you let us know by email. There are 5 reasons why a student might not attend. Firstly, they might have COVID-19 related illness, including just symptoms that are not confirmed yet. They might have a non-COVID-19 related illness. It may be that they're shielding, or it could be that you're in isolation. It could be any other reason as well. Whatever the reason is, if you could make it clear, we need to then report that to the Department for Education on a daily basis. So please make it clear which of these 5 reasons it is in the email that you send us. If it's not clear, we'll come back to you and ask you for clarification. You may be wondering about PPE. PPE will not be used in schools, and we won't be using PPE unless we are dealing with first aid. And I'll say a bit more about that later on. Students won't be wearing PPE. Please don't send them in gloves. If they wore a mask because they were coming on public transport, we will ask them to remove that mask if they are wearing it on arrival, to put it away and take it home. If it's disposed of on the school site, we will have to double bag that, keep it for 72 hours and then put it with the usual school refuse. Movement around buildings, we're going to try and reduce that as much as possible. So as I was describing in year 10, if it's the core week, they will be staying in the same seat, in the same classroom all day, all morning. If it's the options week, then they may be moving between classrooms to a dedicated seat and desk, and between each use, those desks and chairs will be cleaned. Throughout, we'll be expecting students to observe social distancing, and we've actually bought some 2-metre sticks to help show students how far 2 metres is, because we know that some of them can find that hard to judge. We will keep any movement very brief, and we've got one-way systems in place, and we've got lots of posters up around the school already to show students what to do, and we've got floor markings showing them where they could stand if they need to be 2 metres apart. And Mr. Shields is working on a video to show them what the school building looks like. They'll be in the Justin Welby building most of the time, and as I say, Mr. Shields is recording a video to show them how the building will operate. Mr. Fenn has been hard at work producing a timetable for this wider reopening. It's been very carefully timetabled to keep movement to a minimum and to ensure rooms have a chance to rest and be cleaned as much as possible. The desks are all being moved about, and so they are 2 metres apart, and at no time will students sit face to face or do group work. There'll also be no lining up outside of classrooms. Any lining up that does have to take place would happen outside and be 2 metres apart. There'll be allocated desks, and as I said earlier, absolutely no swapping. The rooms will have posters in them to remind them how to conduct themselves. There'll be cleaning materials available on hand, and students will be trained how to maintain their own workspace, to wipe it down before they begin and to wipe it down afterwards. Each room will be equipped with hand sanitizer, antibacterial spray, cloths and antibacterial wipes. As I said, students and staff will be always conducting workspace hygiene routine like this. They will sanitise their hands, they will take a wipe, they will wipe down their desk and chair and leave the wipe on the desk. They'll then do their work for that session, then they'll hand sanitise again, get a new wipe, wipe down their desk and chair again, and put the wipes into the bin on their way out, and hand sanitise again on exit. Where students may need to bring some work in is in art and textiles. We know they've been hard at work and we would like to see their work. So your child will be invited to bring their art and textiles work into school. For that, we will then have to quarantine that work for 72 hours before staff see it. So it will be put in a room and locked for 72 hours. Then staff will look at it, mark it, and then it will go back into quarantine for 72 hours before your child comes in to collect it. We will have windows and doors open at all times, and we will really flush out the rooms with fresh air in between each usage. Toilets will only be used individually. We'll be using the cubicles in Welby, and as I said earlier, students will be hand sanitising before and after use. The rooms that we've chosen are easily accessible. We've used rooms which have the widest possible corridors and no dead ends. They've all got externally ventilated windows, and we've got easily enough space for socially distanced desks. As I've mentioned, we'll be working really hard to instill excellent hand hygiene routines for the students. Sanitizer pumps are located at every entrance and every exit, and students will be using them on their way in and out of every building, on the way in and out of every classroom, and on the way in and out of the toilets. Our cleaning team from CleanTech are on site every day and are cleaning hourly all the touch points and all the toilets. They will also be cleaning every classroom after it has been used. There's no catering on site, and we'd really like to encourage students not to bring any food on site at all. Any wrappers and things that are brought onto site will have to be taken home. They can't be disposed of in school. There's no water fountains either. They've all been switched off. So as we say, can students please bring a water bottle with them? For those of you that are concerned, the free school meals voucher system will be continuing to run. We're hoping there won't be any need for first aid, there won't be any breaks, there won't be any lunch, there'll be no sport going on, so there should be fewer accidents. However, we will have a non-contact first aid space set up, so if a child needs to use that, they'll be able to come into there, help themselves to a plaster or some cotton wool or whatever it is that they need. Where a member of first aid team is required, they will social distance that support. If they do have to come within 2 metres of a student, then they will use PPE, and that will be worn properly, and they will be trained how to wear it. They'll wear gloves, they'll wear a fluid resistant face mask, they'll wear a full face shield and a disposable apron. There is the new government test, track and trace system in place, and we will be following the guidance with that. If you have any of the coronavirus symptoms, you must self-isolate and book a test on the NHS site. If your child tests positive, then you will be contacted by the NHS track and trace service. So, if you have the symptoms, you should start isolating. You should do that for 7 days, and the household should do it for 14 days. You should book a test. If the test comes back negative, then the household can stop isolating immediately, and you can stop isolating too if you feel well. However, if it comes back positive, you should share the contacts that you've made with NHS Test and Trace. So you will say to them, my child has been at school on a Monday, and then they will be able to contact us and say, who are all the other families who have been in on that Monday? If you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive, then you may well be alerted. So if your child has been in a room with someone who has then tested positive, you will be contacted. We will probably be asked to contact you as well. You would then have to isolate for 14 days, and if you develop symptoms, book a test. The whole household should isolate at that point if you've started to develop symptoms for 14 days. If the test comes back positive, then you begin a new 7-day isolation at that point, and the household continues and completes their 14-day isolation. If the test comes back negative, then the household stops isolating, but you must complete a 14-day isolation. So thank you for listening. As I've said, more details will be coming out specific to your child next week. That will be telling you how to book their one-to-one face-to-face academic review meeting for the first week, and then it will be telling you on which days your child will be attending 4 lessons between now and the summer holiday. Every student in year 10 and 12 will receive some face-to-face lessons in school. If they're not able to attend, then you'll be pleased to know that summaries of those lessons will be posted on Satchel 1. It won't be the same as being in school and won't be as helpful, of course, but it will help them to keep up. Thank you for listening, and thank you for all your support and all your kind messages through this difficult time for us as a school. I hope you're well. God bless.